Patch 6.4 Baldur's Gate 3 is live, and with it comes a ton of big changes as well as buffs and nerfs. And today we're going to talk about it. Let's get to it. So just a quick warning to anybody who hasn't beaten the game yet. This video is going to contain massive spoilers. I won't be holding anything back. So we're going to start off with some of the stuff that they highlighted and then dive into the more nitty-gritty details. You can now dismiss a recruited companion from your party while speaking to the companion you want to replace them with. This is an absolutely phenomenal change because it's really annoying to have to go back over to somebody, dismiss them first, and then go to the new person that you want to recruit. This just speeds up the process. When a dialogue triggers automatically, the game will now try to prioritize your avatar character as the main speaker. This is another phenomenal change that should have already been taken care of a long time ago because it is super annoying when you end up with the wrong person in dialogue, especially when it is not the face of your party. If you started your game on a set difficulty, you can now switch to custom mode, except when already playing in honor mode. Next up, they fixed the shield bash and rebuke of the mighty passives and not triggering saving throws. It's just always good when stuff works properly. Moving on to a host of gameplay changes, you can now toggle off repelling blasts as expected. This is really good to be able to do because there may be certain situations where you don't want to knock somebody off a ledge because you want their loot. Auto-selecting your camp supplies before a long rest will use resources more optimally. This is a really good one because I quickly realized when playing the game that using the auto-select camp supplies was never a really good option because it would often select too much, or sometimes it would tell you it selected the proper amount, but if you actually did the math properly, it was more than what you needed. It just didn't show it on the screen. So hopefully this fixes all of that. Group hide now works on all party members controlled by the player, including followers and summons. It's really annoying when your summons don't hide when everybody else is hiding. This next one is a two-parter, and there's one of these that's way better than the other. So they made it possible to dismiss party members during camp nights. That's okay. But the really good one here is they also made it possible to recruit hirelings to a full party. They just hang around camp until you need them. This is so good. I've gone to grab a hireling for testing purposes many times and forgotten to have kicked somebody out of my party first, and you go through all Withers dialogue just to realize you can't recruit them, and then you got to go talk to somebody to kick them out of your party so that you can go then bring a hireling into your party, and this just gets rid of all of that fuss. The elixir of hill giant strength now applies its effects when thrown. I guess all elixirs have done this in the past. I don't know why you'd need to throw one. Wouldn't you have just drank it beforehand? But either way, this is a good fix. If all other elixirs work in the same way, they should all work that way. As a quality of life improvement, the packed weapon condition now remains after long rest. Can we get a heck yeah in the comments? That is super annoying to have to apply every single day and have to remember this is a phenomenal quality of life addition. Now we're going to start getting into some of the buffs and nerfs. So they buffed some stuff in tactician mode. The Drider has a special sanctuary called Spindleweb Sanctuary that erupts in psychic explosion when the status condition ends. In addition, his Spindleweb fanaticism aura will now debuff his enemies. They also improved combat AI pathfinding through dangerous surfaces and through steep terrain. They increased the number of valid methods of knocking out Minthara in order to recruit her. So basically they just made it much easier to recruit Minthara than she already was, which is definitely a good thing. We'll get back to some more buffs and nerfs here in a minute, but first onto UI because these patch notes are all over the place and I'm just going in order. So the trade interface got a graphic overhaul clarifying which character is bartering for your party, what their persuasion score is, and how much of a discount they're getting for the trade. The feedback when bartering has also been improved to indicate the status of the offer. This is phenomenal. They did an absolutely amazing job on this and it looks great. I love the overhaul to the UI for trading. The whole party's inventory is now present in the trade interface, which doesn't require you to switch characters to sell items from their inventories anymore. This is also phenomenal. So when you go to trade, everybody who's in your party's inventory is just there for you to sell from. So you don't gotta swap back and forth to whoever in order to make trades or go grab stuff from their inventory or just leave the interface in general. This is a phenomenal change. Great quality of life improvements. They added custom mode settings to the lobby UI, giving you time to create personalized experience while waiting for your friends. They also made it so that the camp chest is now integrated into the camp inventories UI. So now when you click the little UI to bring up everybody's inventory that's in your camp, they changed that, labeled that camp inventories, and now when you click it, you also see your camp chest there. This is great because this means you can just anywhere in the camp, you can access your camp chest. You don't need to run up to it. It's a massive time save and a phenomenal change. All right, back to buffs and nerfs. So this one's a bit of a nerf. So in honor modes, this is only in honor mode, the additional attack granted by haste no longer grants extra attacks to the Slayer form. So big nerf to Slayers in honor mode. The Grasping Vine spell has been updated to be more useful in combat. It has better stats and it spawns vines in a radius when summoned. That's a buff. The Tadpole power, Fractured Psyche's follow-up spell, Shatter Psyche, is now a bonus action if you have the Awakened Feat. That's a buff. Mage Slayer and Potent now work while in wild shape and other shapeshift forms. That's also a buff. Or maybe a fix, but it could be a fix that's actually a buff. Player characters in Mind Flayer form no longer gain an armor class buff to their form. So if I understand that correctly, that is a nerf to the Mind Flayer form, but that form is already so strong anyway, you could have 0 armor class and you would still be an absolute beast. Mimics got a buff. They now have increased attack damage. Several NPC spells will no longer be able to target characters with the Sanctuary condition as intended. This is a definite buff to Sanctuary because there's been a lot of things that have been able to target you while you have that on, and they should not be able to. ʞᴏᴜ can now use her Panther form while she's a party follower. She can also now use Lesser Restoration and Call Lightning. That's buff to ʞᴏᴜ. Counterspelling legendary actions that can be counterspelled now removes the legendary action condition as well. That's definitely a buff. The Slayer's Relentless Lunge attack now breaks Sanctuary. So that's a buff and a nerf at the same time. So if you're fighting a Slayer, then that's gonna hurt you. But if you are the Slayer and you have that ability, then that is going to buff you. So I'd say that's a break-even thing. They fixed Nier. Nier's legendary action now correctly triggers when he is attacked rather than when he attacks. So I guess this wasn't working as intended and they fixed it. They increased the difficulty of Kethric's encounter in Tactician and Honor mode. So as I stated earlier, they made a lot of little changes here and there to Tactician mode to make it a little bit harder, and I'll just be pointing out some of the bigger ones. Now, this next one is really interesting, so I wanted to make sure I pointed it out. The change itself isn't that big of a deal, but what they stated here is, so the Apostle of Merkel's Finger of Death spell is now treated as a level 7 spell instead of a cantrip. So if you don't know, our spells only go to level 6. This means the game has an innate capability to already go higher than level 6 spells. So even though that this is an NPC that's casting a level 7 spell, this tells us that that system is already hardwired into the game to go higher than level 6. This means later on, we could get patches that give us level 7 spells, or we could get a DLC that brings level 7 or level 8 or higher level spells. And I just thought that was really interesting to point out there and kind of build a little bit of hype for what the future of this game could have, because this tells us that that system is in place to go higher than level 6. And that's without being modded. I know you can mod higher level spells into the game, but that's them modding them in, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's already hardwired into the game. Modders can do a lot. They made several improvements to the combat with the Gondians, who will be much more careful now. For example, they raised their dexterity to 14, gave them the blur spell, gave them better armor, and granted them light and medium armor proficiency. Cazador now heals for 100 hit points instead of 20 when he completes his ritual and ascends. So yeah, he got a massive buff. They upgraded Hope's armor from half plate armor to plate armor. But at the same time, they also changed her shield to a regular shield instead of a +2 shield. So she kind of got a buff and a nerf at the same time, so she's going to be about as useful as she was beforehand. They fixed bystander NPCs not reacting to you damaging someone else by pushing them, shove, thunderwave, etc. if the landing position of the victim is too far from the NPCs. So beforehand, if you shoved somebody far enough away from other people, they just didn't realize it happened because they were so far away when they landed. But now, just you doing it is going to trigger some type of reaction from NPCs. The Bottled Breath Potion no longer lets you cast a Gust of Wind infinite times, so they nerfed that or fixed it, whichever you prefer. This next one is so good because it's something that has driven me nuts forever. If you send Shadowheart to camp, she'll keep the artifact on her. If a custom character or a hireling has the artifact and is dismissed to Wither's Wardrobe, the artifact will transfer to another character. So you don't have to carry that freaking artifact around in your inventory all the time. You can pass it off to Shadowheart and leave it there on her. Fixed a bug related to the permanent sea invisibility condition granted by ʟᴏᴜᴜᴜ, whatever that is, the condition will now remain after the character who had it is killed and then resurrected. So now you can die and ensure that you keep that permanent buff. When you cast Hold Person / Monster, Polymorph, or Dominate Person / Monster from a place where no NPC can see you, so this also means if you're invisible, NPCs will notice the victim getting affected by your spell and will start to investigate. Stink Cloud saving throws can now be made with advantage if the character has advantage against poison saving throws. That is a nerf to Stink Cloud. Items can only be sent to specific companions in camp if a party member is in camp at the time. Water elementals and water myrmidons can now recover from deep water chasms. This is interesting because this means if you get knocked into a chasm when you are in that form and there is water in the chasm, so it's not like a bottomless pit, you can apparently recover from that. So that's a pretty cool feature and definitely a buff to shapeshifting into those forms. This next one is a massive nerf and I'll explain why afterwards. So they fixed transmutation stones not being destroyed when their caster leaves the party. So if you didn't know, you can make a transmutation stone that gives you Constitution saving throw proficiency, which is great because it's a really easy way to give your class proficiency in Constitution saving throws if your class doesn't have it. It was really easy to exploit this because you could just get a bunch of hirelings, make them a wizard, and then make the transmutation stones, put it on your character, kick them out of the party, leave them hang out in camp, and now you have permanent proficiency in Constitution saving throws. Well, now you can't do that, so that sucks. That's a massive nerf. The Wave Mother's Robe no longer lets you use watery regeneration outside of turn-based mode and combat. That kind of sucks, and that's a bit of a nerf. The Armor of Landfall's Green Bed Regeneration passive now correctly regenerates hit points at the start of a turn. This is phenomenal, and this is something that I tried to build around beforehand, but could not because it was broken, and so it's fantastic that they fixed that armor piece. Warlock's bound pact weapon can no longer be disarmed, as it should be. Fantastic fix. The Staff of Cherished Necromancy's life essence is now consumed as expected after casting a necromancy spell. That's a good fix. It's kind of a nerf because, well, it was broken, obviously, so it's a fix, but yeah, it was very broken because you could just build those charges and cast spells for free as long as they were necromancy spells, and that's been that way for some time, so it's about time they fix that. All paladin actions now work with free cast illithid powers. That's a good little buff there to paladins. We got a bunch of buffs and fixes to the Wildheart barbarians. So Wolf Wildheart barbarians now grant advantage to allies for unarmed melee attacks, not just melee weapon attacks, including unarmed spell attacks like Shocking Grasp. This is really strong, and this can be even stronger if you have a specific set of gloves that allow you to turn any spell into a melee spell. That's a fantastic buff. All Wildheart barbarians now correctly receive resistance to falling damage while enraged. Bear Wildheart barbarians now correctly deal rage bonus damage to unarmed attacks like other barbarians. The Tavern Brawler feat now also applies the bonus damage to improvised weapon attacks. I'm pretty sure it was supposed to already do that, so I think this is just a fix. Correct me if I'm wrong down there in the comments. They fixed a bug preventing you from pinning surface tooltips. This is something that showed up in a previous patch, a bug that was introduced. I don't know when, how, or where, or why, or what happened, but I noticed I wasn't able to do it anymore, so it's nice that this got fixed and you can now check surfaces with tooltips because it lets you see how long that surface has left on the ground. Magic items present within dismissed character inventories can now be donated to Gale. I'm so glad they are improving the whole donate your item to Gale nonsense because it has been an absolute pain. I don't like to donate items to him to begin with, but having it be as much of a pain as it was, this is a great change. Here's another one of those. They buffed Tactician mode notes. In Tactician mode, Cloaker's Phantasm's action now summons an additional illusionary duplicate, and Cloakers have the alert feat. If you escape prison and then return to your cell and close the door without being noticed by anyone allied to the arresting guards, you'll no longer be considered a fugitive. This is hilarious. So you could just escape from prison, go do some stuff, and then put yourself back in jail and no one will care. I don't know why you would want to do that, but it's cool that they put little details like that in there. The achievements relating to specific origins will now be unlocked for all players in the session, not just the player involved in the moment. This affects the following achievements, and then it just lists all of the achievements that it affects. That's a really cool change because that ensures that if you're in multiplayer and someone is doing an origin character, you get those achievements too. Good Boys, Scratch and the Owlbear Cub will now play together in any camp, not just the main one in the wilderness from Act 1. Reading Minthara's map after leaving the wilderness now correctly reveals the location it's supposed to reveal after you return. I'm not sure what that one means. That's why I highlighted it and wanted to read it out loud to you all. If you know what this is referring to, let me know down there in the comments, because I mean, this is obviously a good thing because it's supposed to do this and it wasn't before, but I just don't understand what it's talking about here. I never ran into this issue or this thing. Casting Moonbeam on a blighted area in the Shadow Curse lands will lead to the caster losing concentration over the spell and dispelling it. Oils that can be used to coat weapons now indicate their duration in the tooltips. This is a great little thing here because it's super nice to be able to plan a little bit better, and this gives you that info to help you plan a little bit better instead of just using the oil and hoping it lasts long enough or as long as you need it to. Tooltips for spells requiring concentration now more prominently display a warning if you are already using concentration to maintain another spell. This is such a welcome addition and such a nice little quality of life thing, because I am really bad about using another concentration spell when I'm already using a concentration spell. I do it all the time by mistake, so this is a nice little thing that will hopefully help keep you from doing that as much in the future. And then the list just goes on and on and on and on. It's like a book, but a lot of this stuff is just little fixes and tweaks, and I didn't notice anything else that was too like stand out that you should really be concerned about. Just a ton of fixes and little tiny changes here and there. There is one thing I want to point out that I did notice, and I think it's going to drive a lot of people nuts, and that is with the UI changes that they made, they also removed the numbers in the character creation. So it's just those big chunky sliders now that you also see in all of the other menus. And I'm not really bothered by this, but I feel like this is probably going to frustrate a bunch of people. So I just wanted to point that out to you so it's not a shock the next time you boot up the game. Let me know what you all think about all of these little buffs and nerfs and changes down there in the comments section. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the subscribe button and notification bell so you can be notified when I upload other videos. And if you're looking for some more Baldur's Gate content, you should check out one of my other videos on the screen right now. I want to give an absolute massive shout out and thank you to all of my channel supporters for helping to keep these videos sponsor free. You all are absolutely amazing people. If you would like to become an official channel supporter, check out the links in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. If you're shy, you don't like to comment, just hit that thumbs up button and share your support. Until next time, thanks for watching.